let's get that presentation ready to go for you all. And we are here. Wonderful. Well, we'll take it right to our program overview. So, what are we going to do today? Our goal is to answer some of the basics. We can't get into everything tonight, but we really want to give you an opportunity to get to know the admissions process and really understand independent schools in general. And that's because we are creating this presentation as part of LAIS, the Los Angeles Association of Independent Schools. We are a group of independent schools throughout the LA area, and we're pretty far down all the way into the south, up to the North Valley, way out east, you name it. We kind of represent those different communities, from small elementary schools to large comprehensive K-12 schools, a variety of different philosophies, programs, and opportunities. And you will get to know those schools through our website if it's something you're interested in, losangeles.independentschools.org, or by simply joining any one of our different open house events, virtual events, in-person opportunities, just getting to know an independent school. The purpose of these events is really to come to you, meet you wherever you are, whether it's on a cell phone, driving home from work. Hopefully you're focusing on the road, just listening to audio. That's fine. We're okay with that. Or if you're in the comfort of your own home, wherever it may be, our goal was to bring this information to you, introduce ourselves, and hopefully give you the chance to get to know us individually a little bit better. And so we're not really going to focus tonight on our individual schools, but hopefully give you a broad understanding of how all of our independent schools operate and work. So today we're going to go ahead and have a team of people with me. So again, I'm Zahir Rob, Director of Admissions at New Road School, a K-12 school in Santa Monica. And I've got a great team here with me today, and they'll introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Lori Wolke. I'm the head of school of Lawrence School.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. My name is Katrina Lappin. I'm the Director of Admissions at the Center for Early Education, preschool through sixth grade school in West Hollywood. It's so nice to be here with you tonight.
Hi, everyone. I am Beth Bihar, and I am the Director of Admission at Y School. So I do admissions for the preschool, the elementary school, but I also do middle school placement for our sixth graders.
Great. Well, we've got a wonderful team here tonight. As you can hear, a wide range of backgrounds at different school communities, different age groups. I know they can answer all the questions we have tonight. So what we're going to cover tonight, we're going to start with what is an independent school? Then we'll move over to why would I choose an independent school? Then we'll connect with the idea of, now that I'm excited about an independent school, how do I afford it? And then your roadmap, really walking you through that admissions process if you haven't done it already, if this is something you're looking forward to or maybe a little nervous about. We'll take you through each step of the way, hopefully make that a little bit easier, and then we'll move on to an open-ended Q&A for you all. Again, we hope you have some questions, and we'll walk you through that process as we get to it. But let's go ahead and get started, because I know you all are busy, and we want to give you the time you need. So, what is an independent school? So, as you're aware, there are lots of different school opportunities in Los Angeles. You've got your local neighborhood public school, you've got charter schools, you have magnet schools, you have private schools, and then you have this independent school. And it's kind of hard sometimes to differentiate some of these schools from each other. What's the difference between a public, charter, and magnet school? Well, those are all tuition-free public operating institutions. They have different enrollment processes and procedures. Some are just based by region. Others are based by a lottery system or a complex system of magnet points. It really just depends on what you're looking at in those public systems. And then you have private schools, which is sort of a broad umbrella term for any number of different types of schools. They could be for-profit, they could be nonprofit. They could have an independently operating board, or they could not have a board at all and operated by a single individual as a business entity. Our independent schools stand alone in sort of this marketplace. We are connected together for kind of some singular ideas of all having an independent board that oversees us. So our board exists for the success of our schools. They are sort of in charge and reliant solely upon the schools, not other sort of entities or another motives. And so that makes us independent. We can make decisions as a school. We can decide we want to serve K through 12, K through 6. We're free from sort of geographic boundaries. We can have different philosophies and different structures. We're independent in every sense of that word, which kind of creates a unique opportunity for us. When you think about it, and kind of I think a real world example for all of us that we just lived through, when you have something like COVID, each individual school can make a decision about how they're going to tackle that problem. It's not a global decision that's made by a larger board that is not connected to individual communities or individual neighborhoods. And so how we can approach a problem like this can be unique to our own school and the population we serve. And so it's just an example of what an independent school can do. The other thing is we are a nonprofit entity. So we're not operated on a profit motive. We are operating again for a particular mission or purpose. And that takes us to that next piece, which is we're very strongly mission driven. And that's something you should look at as you get to know these schools. What is their mission? Why do they exist? Who do they serve? And how do they operate and function? And what are their goals as an institution? And as you get to know that mission, does it resonate with you as a family? Again, as you look at schools, yes, you want to look for things you're looking for in an education, but how does that mission come to life in that education and the school community? So that's something you're going to find that's unique to every single independent school, whether they're a member of LAS or in any number of other different consortiums, depending on what neighborhood you're coming from. Also, that flexibility and freedom, which we talked a little bit about earlier. We can be a little bit more nimble and responsive to change. We're more connected in many ways to our families and can be more responsive because we're looking at an individual school site, not a complex of several schools, or a large district in some cases. So that flexibility and nimbleness allows us to really pursue and pivot when things change, whether that be a new curriculum that's coming along or whether it is sort of a global issue that we're all having to deal with as a community. And so these are kind of what comprise an independent school. And as you get to know the educational landscape, we always say, look at your options, see what's available to you. It's a beautiful thing to be in LA and have this wealth of choices, but see the differences between them and find out what really speaks to you as a family. And most importantly, to your child that's making this consideration. If you're here tonight, you're here for a kindergarten panel. So this is your first real entry into real school, right? As kids call it, I'm going to be a grader soon. And that's kind of a unique journey. And we want you to be informed in that process. I know it's a lot of work, and that's kind of why we're putting together these seminars to hopefully break down some of those walls as you kind of go on that journey. And so now to kind of talk about why you might choose an independent school, I have Lori.
Thank you. Wow, that was really, really well done. Wonderful. It was very informative. So again, I'm the head of Lawrence School. I've been there for over 30 years. Lawrence School is a K through 6 independent school. And I know that all of you are probably looking at all different types of independent schools, K through 6, K through 8, K through 12, and they're all very, very different. And I think that as you really look at these schools, it's really important to really look at how do they do school? And I think the best way to do that is to be there. And to be there to really look in the classrooms. I always say that the walls speak. And so look at the walls, see what the school emphasizes. What are they really looking at? How are they handling things in terms of schools, independent schools say that we support the whole child. We call it the total child. And that is the social and emotional aspect of the child, the academic aspect. Look at the programs in terms of what they have and how many programs start at kindergarten. Or do they start at 4th grade? Or do they start at 6th grade? Or where do the programs start? And I think that's an important question to really look at and ask. And that the beauty of an independent school, again, is that we really try to be as well-rounded as possible, meaning that every independent school I have ever seen has a well developed dance or performing arts program. They might be different in terms of how they implement it and their discipline or their structure or their how they have a, whether it's more of a structured program or maybe it's a more free flowing program. But usually the performing arts department is very well developed. The visual arts department, the athletics. Also look at some of the schools too, is when do athletics start? Because normally even in an elementary school, they'll start in 4th grade. And that's a wonderful part of an independent school, is to have an athletics program that has games with other schools and competitions. And I think it's really healthy, and what kids learn from sportsmanship is not tradable, and the amount of growth of learning how to lose and learning how to grow, how to collaborate, how to get along with others, to put others in front of yourselves. I mean, there's a really important program. Technology, look at the technology and how well developed that is. Every independent school I know has their usage of technology, how they train parents in terms of managing technology with their own children is very important. So look at the programs and look at the difference between the different schools, and really look at the curriculum and the programs is really important. But I think you will see that total child of where it's very, very well-rounded. And then in terms of also a priority to independent schools is diversity, equity, and inclusion. And it's a priority because it makes our world to have a diverse environment, whether it's teachers or children or families. It makes our environment richer and better, and it helps our children to become more effective and successful citizens of the world. And it's probably one of the most important initiatives that independent schools are continuing to prioritize. And so really delve into that program. What does belonging look like? What does inclusion look like? And more in terms of then what they say, how do they do it? How do they manifest that? Those principles? What are the speakers that come? I think that's really also important as you look around and you see, speak to parents and really delve in deeply in terms of those kinds of programs and how deeply it's part of their priority and their mission. And then again, the curriculum. That's another beautiful part of independent schools, as I said, is that we are able to do and promote a curriculum that isn't always the state standards. I mean, very much so many schools follow the state standards, but they can also deviate from the state standards and add to the state standards. So you're getting so much more than just the pure state standards. And then the ability and the resources to bring in the best literature and the books and textbooks and articles and webcasts and so many different types of curricula is so important to an independent school, because we have the ability to be independent from the public school system, but that usually the resources are an absolute priority for a school, is to be able to have those kinds of resources. That when you spoke about being able to pivot quickly, yes, we were able to pivot quickly. We had laptops for everyone. We had iPads for everyone. We brought in the owls or the cameras so that all the kids who were sick could see inside the classrooms immediately. And those are huge advantages of an independent school, because we can operate very, very quickly, since we're not being funded by a particular source, which is really important to an independent school. Then I wanted to share also what I think is really the most important. I tell our families all the time is that you are not just looking for a school for your child, it's for you. And I think that's really, really important. And, I've been doing this for so many years. And I remember even like years ago, I'd have a family say that, we're more of our philosophy is a little different, but my son, this is the right school for him. And to be honest with you, it doesn't work. You can find a school that's perfect for your child and perfect for you. And you have to, honestly, that's the best advice I can give is that you are a family into this. This is your community. These are your friends for life. This is your children's friends for life. And it really does start in elementary school. It really honestly does, is that these years are so critical for you and for your sense of belonging and inclusion, that please delve in as deeply, come to sporting event games, come to assemblies, try to really figure out the culture and say, how does this feel to me? Also, look at their kids, their kids that are graduating. If you're a sixth grade, go to sixth grade, you see the sixth graders, talk to them, speak to the kids. That's such an important part because your child will be those children one day. And so it's really, really important. And so look at the shared values, the goals, and the culture. The culture of a school is paramount to everything. You have to be aligned. You don't have to be, but you're going to be so much happier if you're aligned with the group, the culture, the children, because you also want to feel comfortable that sending your child on a play date with another family at their home where you might not be there. So you want a space where you honestly can share those values and goals and expectations. And it's nice when not everybody is the same at the school. All the differences are so cherished at these schools because, again, that makes our world so much richer and so much happier. To learn multiple perspectives, to understand people, to be respectful, and to really understand with empathy the world around us. And so without further ado, because I know you've got questions and we want to answer those questions, but I'm going to turn you over to Katrina. And thank you so much for having me.
Hi again, everyone. I'm going to talk a little bit about affording independent schools, and this is a topic that I love to talk about. I'm going to try to share a little bit of information with all of you, because whether or not your family is considering financial aid, or also called, flexible tuition, tuition assistance, adjusted tuition, all of these different names, whether or not your family is exploring it for yourselves, it is a really big piece of each school, and it's important to know about it as you're exploring these different independent schools. As you're going to hear over and over again tonight from me and my colleagues, there's, some of our answers are going to be, you have to talk with the school because we're all independent schools, and it may be a little bit different. There may be a different flavor to this at one school than another school. One of the commonalities that we all share as independent schools in Los Angeles, whether this is baked into our founding or whether it's something that schools have been working on more recently, is this commitment to economic diversity and understanding that we want our schools to be reflective of a wide range of financial and economic experiences within our schools. So as you're exploring your options, for many families, part of that is thinking about the reality of what is the cost of tuition at each school. And what we're all going to ask you to do is not stop there, and to think a little bit about the different financial aid opportunities at each school. And again, they will be a little bit different at each school, but to learn about these. Families often will talk with me, and I'm sure with each of my colleagues, about I'm thinking about applying for financial aid, but I'm not sure if I'd qualify, but I don't know if I can, cover the tuition and as many years. And so if your family is having these considerations, we want you to apply for financial aid. One of the biggest kind of misconceptions around financial aid in independent schools is that grants are only going to be at the, highest level. But schools are typically going to have grants and want to have grants that are from 5% of tuition. It might be $1,000 or $2,000 that a family kind of needs to bridge that gap to make the tuition work for their family. It may be a 50% grant, a 75% grant, up to 99% grant. So depending on the school, there's different grant levels and there's a range of them. What is financial aid? Financial aid, so for families who have maybe experienced financial aid at the college level, in independent schools, it's a little bit different. There's no loans in independent schools. For elementary school, you're typically going to be seeing grants that are funded through the school's operating budget or fundraising. So it's not a financial aid grant, is really adjusting the tuition to be affordable for the family in the school, rather than saying, here, we're going to lend you this and you are going to pay it back over however many years. It's really about adjusting that tuition level. Financial aid at independent schools is not funded through the state or federal government. Again, it's typically going to be through the school's own budget. Financial aid, what does it cover? So as I said, it covers a percentage of tuition. Some schools, depending on their budgets, may have a cap at, grants go up to 60% of tuition, depending on family demonstrated need. Some schools will have grants going up to 99% of tuition, or now and then even 100% of tuition. Sometimes grants are also going to be covering additional costs at school. So things like transportation, after school care, school lunch. If a school has uniforms, it will help with uniforms. If there's a technology fee, it will apply to that. And so it's really important as you're learning these schools to be looking at and asking the questions, if it's not easily accessible on the website, of, are there additional costs associated with going to school? And if so, how does financial aid get applied to those costs? The process for applying for financial aid, it is, it's a significant process. So I want to be honest about that, and it's also doable. And the schools that you're working with are going to want to help you make sure that it's doable. So if you have questions, if you hit roadblocks, call the schools and they will walk with you through that process. It starts by, I encourage you to, tonight, if you haven't yet, and you're thinking about financial aid, every school that you're interested in, look at their website, and next to their application for admission deadline, which is important and separate from financial aid, look at their financial aid application deadline. Please do not be late applying for financial aid, but if you are, call us and ask, can I submit a late application for financial aid? It's just easier for families if you can do it before the deadline. The financial aid application, it's a separate organization typically that you're going to be submitting the application to. Different independent schools work with different companies that have their own methodology and processing of financial aid applications. So it may be SSS or FAST or Clarity or FACTS or TADS. There's a lot of different, and they're all acronyms, and I can never remember what their acronyms stand for. But you'll submit a lengthy financial aid application that's going to look at your assets, your income, your debt, age of parent or parents, how far you are from retirement, number of dependents who are children, number of dependents who maybe are other family members or other people in your life. And so they're going to look at all this information along with some accompanying documents like tax returns, and share with the schools a kind of baseline. This is what, based on our calculations, this family, again, for the cost of living in Los Angeles, this family can contribute to independent school tuition. From there, I always tell families, life's very rarely fit neatly into the boxes of a financial aid application. So there's always more of a story to each of our families' lives. And there's every application for financial aid has a extra information box. Use that box and share with us, If you're expecting a very different income in 2023 than you had in 2022, explain the details of that. If there was a recent job loss, if there's a elderly parent who's about to move in with your family, share that information. We recognize and really are, I think, humbled with the amount of information that families share with us in this financial aid application process. We know it's a lot of information that we're asking for. And it's okay to ask schools, who has access to this information. It's typically a very small committee of people who have it and who take that confidentiality very, very seriously. I also want to make a pitch for that. We did a webinar a week ago with Alyssa Evans, who's a national financial aid and independent school expert. And we have her webinar posted on the LAIS website. So that's also another really great resource to check out. So I think that's all I have to say about financial aid right now. But if you have any questions in the Q&A, please ask, because we really want to make sure that you have those questions answered. I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Beth.
Great. Thank you so much. So when I first introduced myself, I said, not only am I the admission director, but I'm also in charge of middle school placement. So I kind of do every single year what you all are going through right now with 46th graders who are not much different than your children. They're just taller with bigger feet, and some of them are actually shaving. But so I want to walk you through this process because, like I said, it's very, very similar. So it is something that I am used to. So we're just going to walk you through. So what I want to tell you is the most important thing that I would want you all to know is we as independent schools are on your side, and we want you to know that we are trying to make this process as easy for you as possible. We understand that for first timers, it can be quite intimidating. And in the old days, there were different things that each school asked for, different application deadlines, different notifications. And so all the independent schools came together and formed a consortium. And now, to the best of our ability, we are trying to make it very similar, the process for all the schools that you are looking for and eventually applying to, because we understand it can be a tremendous amount of work and you have small children. So let's walk you through this. But again, that is really the most important thing that I would want you to know is admission offices are filled with lovely, wonderful, warm people who are there to answer your questions and to help you. We want to make this process easy for you. So the very first thing is we've all worked very, very hard on our websites to sort of make the website really represent our school, and they are there for you. And so I would want you can access all of all the schools that you could be looking for through our LAIS website, which is really, really wonderful. All the schools in the consortium can be linked through there, and it's a wonderful resource for you. You can be sitting on your couch with your laptop in the privacy of your own home, and you can start to get to know all the different schools. So when do you start to apply for kindergarten? As much as we'd love to talk to you when your child is 3, we just simply can't do it. There's just too many people in the world. So you start looking for kindergarten the year before, when you're in pre-K or TK. So if you're thinking of going to kindergarten next year, this is the time when you are looking to apply. So each school might have a slightly different process. Sometimes you have to fill out an inquiry. Sometimes you're able to just fill out an application. And again, the websites of each individual schools, those are your best friends. They're going to be able to tell you the process. And here's the other thing. If it's confusing, pick up the phone and call. We get phone calls all day, every day. We would much rather you call us and ask us a question. And within a 40-second conversation, we can probably clear up any of those questions that you have for us. So once you've decided, hey, I'm interested in this school, you're going to go to the website and you're either going to fill out an inquiry or potentially you might be ready to apply. So that's going to lead you down a path. And there's going to be open houses that you can go to, which is a wonderful way of getting to know a school. Schools can be inviting you to different, like as Lori said, they might be inviting you to assemblies and they might be inviting you to sports events. There's lots of different ways of getting to know schools. But here's the thing that we all need from you, and we've all come to an agreement that there are certain things that we need. Every school that you apply to is going to need an application. And that application is going to ask for pertinent family information. And then most likely there's going to be a couple questions that we're going to ask. Now, let me stress this. There's no right or wrong answers to these questions. These truly are a way for us to get to know you. So I say it to our sixth grade families, and I'm going to say it to you again, please know there's no right or wrong. It is truly answers that make you sort of jump off the paper. It is a way for us to get to know your family better. And then every other thing that we're going to need is going to be coming from your preschool. It's going to be teacher recommendations. Your child's teacher is going to fill out a recommendation, and that recommendation goes straight from the teacher to the schools that you're applying to. Simple enough. Once the schools get the application, you will be invited to have an interview. Now, here's where it sometimes gets a little bit different. Obviously, all the schools want to meet your child. That's the most important part, and that's the most exciting part for us. We can't wait to meet your child. Sometimes the schools will say, bring your child to us for a visit. And then there's some schools that say, hey, we're going to go to your preschool and visit your child. Each school will make their individual decision because they've decided what's best for their school. And they will contact you separately. But every school is going to need an application. Every school is going to need a teacher recommendation. What will kind of differ is how they get to know you and how they get to know your child. Okay. After all that information is in, it's kind of quiet for a few months. And we just ask you to sit tight because that's when we get to work and we get to review everything and meet the children and everything. And what is going to happen is on Friday, March 10th at 5 p.m., and yes, it makes it sound kind of ominous, is that all the schools that you have submitted an application for will give their decision. And what is lovely is if you have applied for financial aid, you will get your financial decision at the same time that you get your decision, because in no world would we expect you to be able to make a decision about where you're going to school if you didn't know what your financial aid award was. So it's kind of like a 6 or 9 month process. Sort of September, October, November, you're looking, you start applying. Once the application is in, the schools get to know you, get to know your child. It's quiet on your end for a couple months. And then in March, decisions come out. And then you have about 1 week before you have to let us know if you're coming or not. We ask for you to let us know as soon as possible because it certainly helps us out. But that is really sort of the timeline. And again, this is what happens the year before you go to kindergarten. We love you if you have a 3-year-old, but we are just not able to talk to you until it's the year before kindergarten. I think that takes care of the process.
Great. Thank you, Beth. Appreciate it. So, as was mentioned, I think by everyone on this panel, admissions directors are here to talk to you. We are here to answer your questions. We are here to connect with you. We are here to share more about our individual communities. And so whether it's as part of an interview process, whether it's at an open house event, whether it's part of a Zoom panel, what are some of the questions you might want to ask as you go through this process of deciding whether this school is a fit and as was expressed, not just for your child, but for you as a family. And so, as we said right on the onset, what is that school's mission or educational philosophy, right? That's an important question to understand because that's going to guide pretty much all the decisions that are made from that point forward. So really getting to understand who a school is an important question for you to ask right on the onset to understand how this rest of the process might go. Size considerations. Are you looking for a smaller, more intimate community, or are you looking for something larger? How many classrooms are there in that kindergarten, right? Is it just one kindergarten classroom community, or are there several, right? An important question to understand. What kind of students do best at this school? Is your child going to thrive within that environment? Do they require a lot of structure? Do they like a little bit more autonomy and freedom and flexibility? How is that day arranged and structured, and how that, again, matches who you're bringing to the table when it comes to that kindergarten applicant? How will the school get to know my individual child, not only as a part of this process, but also once they're enrolled? That's an important journey. They're going to start that kid kind of at 5 or 6 years old, and they may be with that school all the way up through 18. And so it's important for this school to be able to evolve and connect with you as a family. And how does that process occur? When does it occur, and in what ways? What types of learning experiences are available outside of class? You're going to see the classroom, but are there particular traditions, school trips or field trips or outdoor education opportunities? Are there partners in the local community that you work with? Are there other schools that you connect with, right? How do you sort of take that learning and take it out into the world? How does the school get parents involved? At this age, they're still excited every time you show up on that campus if you're able to. It's a lovely opportunity, but how does the school do that? How do they manage that? What are the opportunities that are available? And on the flip side of that, if you don't have that availability or time, how does the school support, families that work long hours or are unable to access that campus or are still taking care of little ones at home? So, you really want to get to know and ask these questions. And then, right, it's not easy. It's LA. How can I get my young person to campus? How does that shift if they get to middle or upper school, depending on if the school continues on? Really having some of those basic questions asked, because you may fall in love with a school, but if you can't get there every day, that's something you might want to consider as you go on this journey. There's, again, a wealth of independent schools that are out there. So look for the ones that best fit. And a good way to start is by going through these questions. So these are just some ones to get your mind going. But of course, tonight was to really give you a chance to ask questions. So I'm going to stop sharing here. And we're going to go ahead and get to that portion. We're about halfway through sort of this process, if you will. So in the bottom corner, and some of you were kind enough to submit some questions ahead of time, but in that bottom, you'll see a little Q&A tab. And if you click on that Q&A tab, you'll be able to ask questions directly to us. We'll get a notification on our end, and we can just start going through those questions. So again, feel free to ask whatever questions you have. They'll probably come flying fast and furious. So we're going to do our best to get through the questions we can in the time that's available here. But again, just feel free to send those along. But we'll just go ahead and get started with that process and hopefully answer any of those burning questions, either that were kind of came to mind as we started tonight, or that may be something that's been with you for a long time. So I'll start for the first one. And we kind of talked about this already, but I think it's good to have this clarification. So someone had asked early on, is it mandatory that you only attend LAS schools by your zone or district or neighborhood, or am I free to apply to sort of any independent schools? So Beth, why don't you, if you don't mind jumping in on that, like if I'm a family and I'm looking for schools, am I restricted to where I can apply?
Absolutely not. You can apply anywhere you want. But I think it goes back to what we sort of all talked about. You're going to go with what feels right for your family, what clicks for you, what speaks to you. And to be honest, geography may play a little bit of part of it, because you're going to want to create a lifelong community. And so you're going to want to and that's actually a wonderful question. And I always encourage people to ask for, where do the families come from? Because you're going to want kids to come to your house, and you're going to want your kid to go to other people's houses. But no, you can apply to any independent school that you want to.
Yeah, and really, you can make it work for yourself, right? If you work in a different community than in which you live, and that's, helpful for you to have a school that's close by for your own comfort, and just to be able to know that after school, I can pick up my child afterwards or whatever it may be. Again, there are no real geographic regions beyond what you're willing to kind of support. And again, what works for you and your family to best point. So I love that question as we go through. So let me find some other words here. So, oh, this is an interesting one. So talking about the idea of, in the different subject areas. So how do we maybe rate ourselves, or how do we compare in terms of our math programs or ELA programs, or, what are the arts programs at that school? I think, trying to get to the bottom of how will I know if this is a school that's got a high quality math program? What could I do to kind of find that out as a parent who's looking to find a great school for my family? I know, Katrina, you want to, yeah, go for it.
Sure, I'll be happy to start talking about that, and then others can jump in as well. I think the short answer is ask the schools, because there's a wide range of how schools are assessing student progress, both individually and then collectively and year to year, as well as within each grade level each year, and then over the course of a student's experience at the schools. Many, not all schools, participate in elementary, we call it ERB testing. It's through the Educational Records Bureau, and it's a standardized test that begins at, I think, spring of second grade is the earliest that students can start taking that test. And that's one way that many independent schools look at student progress, but there are a lot of both informal and formal assessments that are baked into the student experience that are informing the schools in terms of giving feedback on instruction. It's also going to be helpful for families to have a little bit more information about that. So ask the schools what they do, and that's a totally fair question to ask individual schools.
Great.
I was going to just add to that, just a tad. It said, like, also too, how do you rate like performing arts programs or visual arts programs? And I think that's going to be a really tough one, because there aren't that standardized tests in that area, whereas you would have that in the academic area. But I think that also, if you can visit the schools and see the visual arts department, speak to the visual arts department, the leaders, the teachers in that area, speak about curriculum, see the things. Again, it's like, see it, feel it, touch it, get yourself in there and see how it feels to you. And then possibly even with the performing arts, if the school doesn't have a show that's available for you to go to, then maybe there is something online or a video that you can see, because most of the shows are videoed. And then I think you can start to have a feeling of what the programs would be like. But every school does it differently. And I think that's just wonderful, wonderful questions, is how do you assess students? And I think that every school, again, does it so differently. And it's such a beautiful question for you to get and to listen to the answers.
Yeah, and I think even just starting with a simple question of, what is your grading policy? Some schools give, numerical assessments. Some schools do it in sort of, evaluation bands. Some schools give a lot of narrative feedback. You just want to get a sense of the school and what makes sense for you and your family. What would make you feel confident and comfortable with those questions? But again, coming to the schools directly and diving right in. And Laura, I think you brought up a great point. A lot of us have different theatrical performances or different events. And if you inquire and ask if you're able to join us for one of those events, coming out of COVID, I think we're starting to open up again and welcome community members into some of those events. But again, that's school dependent, what's scheduled and what's available. So definitely reach out to those schools. Another great question, talking about a family who has a child that's neurodiverse and maybe looking for a specific setting or accommodations that may be available. How should they navigate that process? How should they sort of, explore schools? Is there any advice there? How family may go about that process? I don't know if someone wants to take that on out there. And I'm happy to do so as well. Katrina, go for it.
I'm happy to start talking. And again, just add on, everyone. I think really it's important to, as we're talking about 4 and 5 year olds here, and a lot of times families are learning a lot about their children during these ages. And when you're looking at schools, I think one of the best things to do is to, one, get that feel for what the classrooms feel like, but also to really ask the questions about how the classes are structured. What is the class size? What is the ratio of students to teachers? What type of differentiation is practiced in the classroom? Kind of what's that band like in the classroom? What sort of additional supports are available for students? What happens when there's a student who needs some additional support? Families also often are asking, what happens within this band of neurodiversity when children sometimes need additional support, sometimes children need additional challenge in certain subject areas. How are their schools supporting it? And different schools will approach it differently. But I think asking questions like that is really helpful, because in the beginning, in the admissions process, we're trying to get to know children, and we're trying to get to know each individual child and family. So we're not able to, in September or October, have a conversation with a family and say that, and give feedback on the individual child. We're really looking at our whole admissions process for each individual child we meet, to get a sense of, or to determine whether or not the admissions committee believes that the child will be really successful in the program. So that's half of it. But the other half is the family really feeling confident in the program. And that's where all of those questions that you're gathering information and then talking as a family or with any additional support that you have about whether this structure would serve your child well.
Great. I think that's a perfect way to approach it. And again, the more we are partners in this process together, the better we can work together. Because our goal is to find a match. We're trying to find a school and a family that'll do really well in our environments, and we're hoping to provide you with information where this is the right school for you, right? We're not trying to bring every family into our program, and we hope you're being selective in the schools that you're exploring as well. And so when we find those matches, I think it really works well for everyone involved. And the best way to do that is for us to be as open as possible in our communication, and families to be partners in that journey with us as well. And so I think that's a way you could go about it. And Katrina brought up some great tips of just finding out what sort of training the teachers have gone through, what are the support staff, and maybe is there a past history with working with a student who may have a similar profile, and how was that student's journey? How may that give you sort of an experience that you can build upon? So lots of good questions to ask there. Someone was asking, and again, I think this is a different, sometimes it's going to be dependent on the individual schools, but someone asked this question about, if we're looking for a diverse community, how can we get our demographics of a school publicly available? And I think what you'll find is on a lot of school websites, you may see what's called an FAQ page, and sometimes demographics are placed on there. I think another way to do that is to ask the schools and get a sense of it. But we often say, demographics are one piece of the picture, right? It's also then, what do you also do within that community? How does the faculty, staff, and administrative sort of team represent a broad range of backgrounds and cultures and lived experiences? How do you bring these conversations in the classroom? How do you address them? Are there external opportunities not only for the students, but for families as well, right? What does the curricula look like? How does that sort of support that experience? And so while demographics are definitely a great place to start, I think it's also a broader conversation you want to have with the school as you kind of make this decision, because as everyone mentioned tonight, this is the community you're going to be a part of, right? It's the community your children will form relations with. And I'm sure as you're experiencing right now in your preschool, these are the people you spend time around. As we get to a certain age, it's hard to make new friends. They tend to be the parents of our children's friends. And so you want to be around people that you can connect with and bond with. And so finding that community that really works for you, I think, is important. But I would say the best way to start, again, is check out those FAQ pages. If you can't find it there, then reaching out to the individual school and just asking them some questions to get a sense of it. And once you have that general idea, dive in a little bit deeper and just see how they have these conversations. Is it part of their presentations, right? Schools highlight things that they find important too. So Do they emphasize athletics, the arts, climate and culture, the math program? What are the things they're speaking to? And how does that maybe resonate with what you're looking for? Yeah, go ahead, Beth.
Now, my guess is most schools do this. What I have found is a wonderful resource for parents who are applying is existing parents.
Mhm.
Like, I always kind of joke, like, I'm paid to say nice things about my school. Like, of course, I'm going to say wonderful things, but my guess is most of the schools that you're all looking at have a stable of parent ambassadors who like nothing more than to talk to parents that are applying. And a parent to parent conversation is just wonderful, because they'll tell you if there's something that they might not be that crazy about. They might tell you, but they're really going to be able to tell you truly what your K-6 or K-12, depending, experience will be like. And I think if the schools offer that, I would really take them up on it. I find it invaluable. We used it so much during COVID when we weren't able to bring families on, but now that obviously things are sort of back to normal, I find that I'm still using parents all the time. So I would highly recommend, if that is offered at schools that you're looking at, a parent to parent conversation is just wonderful if that's an opportunity you can take.
I love that, Beth. That's a great point. Having that peer conversation with them, ask them about their journey. How did they get to know different schools and what made them ultimately choose the school you're exploring? And to Beth's point, yeah, warts and all, they're usually pretty transparent individuals, and we work with them and we support them in those hard to answer questions. But we then just say, go be yourselves and answer the questions. And if we're doing our job, they're happy families at our school, and they'll tell you the real story, which is lovely. All right, I have another question here, which I think is great, especially at this age group. What's the best way to be involved with our kids' school and work closely with teachers and families? So this is more like after they get in, but love to hear that perspective too. Lori, go ahead.
Oh, I'd be happy to answer that one. And I think that every school does it different, and every school has different committees. Like, for instance, we have 27 different committees that you can be involved with, but I'm sure that for the elementary school, they usually all have serving snacks or serving lunches, or being on campus to maybe work in the library, or maybe there's a garden, or it really is your own passion. And I think that you should, a good thing would be to ask about what are the committees, what does parent involvement look like? I think that that's really, really important, and let them tell you how do they do that, because that's really important for you. It's so exciting, honestly, when your child sees you volunteering on campus, and it doesn't matter whether you're working full-time or you're not. Usually at some point during the year, you can schedule it and schedule the time to be there. So it's not about that you need to be working in the classroom all the time. I mean, many schools have, some of the schools have mostly working families, and but people do try to schedule some time to be there, or to see a performance, or to be working at this school. And I think your children really appreciate it. I also wanted to say about what's the best way to work closely with the teachers. I think that's really also important, is ask that question about what does communication look like? Is it a Friday newsletter that goes out to the community that's general? Is it a newsletter from the classroom? Do I need to make an appointment with the teachers? Will they do it by email? How does that communication happen? Is there a certain amount of time that they need to get back to you on a question? I think the philosophy about being on campus, and some schools are more closed to the parents, some schools are more open to the parents, and feeling that sense of what does that culture feel like for you? And again, those are really critical questions. So don't compromise on anything critical. That's the important part. You can make a whole list of pros and cons for every single school, because every school's going to have it, but then really start to prioritize your list, because certain things are really important, and the culture and how you feel about communication, and then your ability to communicate with the teachers is paramount, because otherwise it's not going to make you happy if you're feeling anxious for anything. Or, what the kids say is, did it really happen that way? Or is there another perspective? And you would want to have that question answered from the teacher, or feel comfortable to say, hey, my kid said, like my Johnny said this, is this what happened? And you could either hear yes or no, or we'll find out. And you want to hear how schools handle conflict resolution. That's really important. It's always a really good question to ask. And then it's also, I wanted to make this point before we leave at some point soon, it looks like it, is that please tell a school if you want to be there. That is so important to a school, because if they know that a family really wants to be there, it is such, it's really important to know that. Because if you have a long list of families that want to, that you don't know if they want to be there or not, you really want to fill up on the people who want to be at your school. And so please, if you know, share what you know. If you don't know, that's fine. And then you'll see what happens. But I think sharing your own feedback with a school is important.
Great.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Lori. So we have just a couple minutes, and there's one doozy of a question at the end here. I'll do my best to tackle it in a couple minutes here. So how are decisions made, right? Easy question. So yes, it is different for each school, but I'll say I feel comfortable in saying without exception, it is a holistic process. We're really investing time to get to know each applicant, each family, and their full journey. It is not going to be a single experience or a single question that sort of, derails your entire process. We're going to weigh several factors in our decision-making process. And we're going to have these conversations usually with multiple individuals to really consider what's possible. What did we learn through this experience? And we're looking at individual classes. Some of us have preschools already, and so how many spaces are open? Some of us have a large kindergarten pool, which is our first entry point, and we're going to be filling a lot more seats. Other schools are going to be really small, and when we go through faculty or maybe sibling applications, and that's a question you might want to ask as well. How many spaces are available? That's a tough one sometimes, but you might want to know, and that'll help you kind of, get a sense of things. And we're taking all of this into context. But what I can assure you is that we're investing a lot of time in each and every single application. We don't just get one and throw it in another pile. We're going to read it cover to cover. They're going to get stained with coffee and tea and water, and they're going to come home with us and come back to school. They're going to be everywhere. There's going to be several eyes on it, because we really want to spend time in it, just like you spent time with us. And every family deserves that. And so I'll be honest, it's a lot of science and it's also a lot of art, and there's no real clear answer there. But to Lori's point, I think when families know this is a place they really want to be, and when we feel it too, there tends to be an alignment and things tend to work out in that way. Doesn't mean it always goes perfectly, but consider those schools. And we notice when families really invest in that process, we see when there's a real connection there. So be authentic, be yourselves. Don't overly prepare for it. You're going to stress yourself out. We're normal people. We are admissions directors. We are just like everybody out there in the audience tonight. And we just want to get to know you and for you to get to know our schools. So please do get to know us in that process. Ask us plenty of questions. We are available, phone, email, at our events. We really want to be at your disposal. And that's what tonight was really about, is just to start that process and that relationship going. I do want to say thank you again to Lori here, Katrina, and Beth and their schools for letting them join us tonight. Thanks to all of those LAS admissions directors, but most importantly, thank you to all of you for being here tonight. I know it's not easy midweek to join us, but I hope this was helpful. And please have a wonderful night, a safe sort of winter, and a successful application process. Thank you for being here tonight.